for those of you who don't know, I'm going to introduce you briefly. Nihal has been created, I think, 5 startups and invested in over 100 startups since 1999. And Reshma has been the first Indian American girl to run for Congress in America. And she has an amazing organization called Girls Who Code. She just did a TED with, I think, 400,000 views in just 2 or 3 days. You can go and see online. 500,000 in what, 3 days? Quite amazing. And her organization is about closing the culture gap, she'll say better than me, the gender gap in technology for women. So I think you'll tell better, but I think in just 4 or 5 years, she was helping 40,000 girls to learn coding in America alone. Please, come on, come on. So thank you, Nihal, for coming back. First of all, thank you for Reshma for doing that for the first time. You've heard what this organization is about, right? Stand up for passion, people following their mission, their passion, their purpose, whatever it takes. What's your story?
In 1 minute?
3 minutes.
In 3 minutes. Ooh, okay. So I always say, like, I'm a serial failure. I fail all the time. I get rejected all the time. And my journey to starting an organization, teaching girls to code, is because I lost an election. I was running for office in 2010. I was watching my mentor, Hillary Clinton, give this concession speech where she had this line where she said, just because I failed doesn't mean you shouldn't try too. And I literally felt like she was talking to me. And so I walked into my boss's office. I was the deputy COO of Fortress Investment Group, on my way to buying an apartment, finally making money, paying off that $300,000 in student loan debt. But I hated my job. I was in the depths of depression, coming home in the fetal position every day. I was miserable. And so watching Hillary have this kind of really powerful moment just inspired me. And I walked into my boss's office and I quit. And at age 33, I decided to run for United States Congress against an 18-year incumbent because I thought that that was a great idea. I had maybe a 1% chance of winning, a banging website, a 1,000-page policy book. I remember the first week just, Indian aunties donated to my website because they were so happy an Indian girl was running. But it was the best 10 months of my life. And as you can imagine, I was sitting there on election day holding my father's hand. We were in my victory party that never happened, watching the television screen not move past 19%. I lost. I was humiliated. I was broke. I had no contingency plan. I'd pissed off everybody in the Democratic establishment. But that experience not forced me, but because of that experience, I visited a lot of schools and saw the gender gap in computer science and technology, and it found me to what my passion is. When I lost my congressional race, I thought that my chance to give back was done, that it was over, that my journey was over. But in taking one of the biggest risks in my life, I found a completely other dream. And had I not lost so miserably, and I ran again 2 years later and lost again, so I keep losing elections and Girls Who Code keeps getting stronger. I think that's like the narrative. But, had I not had those 2 really, painful losses, I never would have started this organization. And I would have never had the chutzpah as someone who does not code. I do not code. I've learned to start an organization called Girls Who Code. I mean, talk about imposter syndrome, right? And not having that because of this tremendous failure. So I'm a big fan of failure. I got the fortune to do a TED Talk a couple of weeks ago that was just released, and my theory is that we socialize our girls to be perfect, and we socialize our boys to be brave, right? How many times have you as women, not done something or gravitated towards a career because you're good at it? Because you don't want to fail and you don't want to lose and you don't want to not get it right. And so many times I feel like we as women would do so much more if we just got comfortable with being imperfect. Like if we just kept getting B's over and over and over again. And that's kind of the gift that I feel like I want to give to young girls and young women across the world, is to just get comfortable with imperfection. And for us as parents, as educators, to stop socializing our girls to be perfect.
Thank you.
I'm not going to go after that. You should just drop the mic. I think
You have
it's over.
to. You have to. What's your story?
So, I mean, I think our big connection is we're both serial failures, right? My first startup was a huge failure, victim of the 2001 dot-com crash, declared bankruptcy when I was like 22 years old. So those Indian aunties that donated to your campaign were literally at the Diwali party in the corner saying, "That kid filed for bankruptcy," and I'm like in the corner. But then it's okay. We got their money for your campaign later. But you know, I think being in that darkness, and by the way, first of all, hats off to all these amazing speakers earlier. We were really moved and inspired. And I think there's a common theme, right? Which is you get so much strength when you're in that dark place. And I felt like I was very fortunate to have experienced that very early, because then it's just upside. If you can stare at failure in the face and come out of those ashes, like you mentioned, you can rise like a lotus flower, I think you said, right? And you just feel invincible because you've been to that place. And so that was startup number one, which was good. Startup number two, fortunately, it worked out a little bit better. And so my career kind of built 5 startups and now run a venture fund and coach other entrepreneurs. Invested in, you know, like Arnaud said, a lot, but really my job is to help entrepreneurs just get to the next level, whether we invest or not, really give back and share a lot of the experiences that I've had. We tell them to fail fast, not on our fail fast first, not on our dime. I said fail fast first, and then come to us, and then But yeah, that's my story. Less than Reshma. We're getting another mic.
Thank you.
But you know, I think that really kind of brought us together in a lot of ways. We met in 2008 on the Barack Obama campaign. Reshma was, of course, organizing this amazing fundraiser, and I was like, you know, the DJ, basically. So that's how I got to meet this incredible woman, and we hit it off. Now I'm like also like her chief promoter and #1 fan. Of those 500,000 video views, you know, I was about half of those. So I cheated a little bit.
Thank you. I would love to hear more about this common theme from both of you, resilience, and especially about the importance of being vulnerable about this. Could you share?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like so much about life is, you know, we say in Hinduism, like, what's your dharma? Like, what do you put on this earth to do? And, you know, life is just a journey to figure that out. And I think so much of it is about figuring out, you know, how you can be authentic. And, you know, people are going through shit and they want to hear the shit that you're going through, and so that they can relate to that. I often think like some of the most annoying things is when you hear people come and speak and their life seems perfect. Like they've done everything right, and you look at them and you're like, I could never do that. You know, I always say that when I speak, it's almost like my failure party, right? That I'm sharing my most vulnerable, toughest moments in hopes that other people who are feeling the same thing can feel like they can get there too. And so I think authenticity, I mean, I would even take it as much, unfortunately, in this political election, right? It's like people, it's crazy. People saying the most craziest things. And it's hitting a nerve with people, because I think people are searching for that realness amongst folks.
I would love to hear your take on entrepreneur, on how much they need to be vulnerable when they come to you and seeking investment or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the data speaks for itself. Entrepreneurs that have failed before actually end up doing a lot better in the long term. Folks that have actually learned from their own lessons and try it again, right? Folks that have been to that place and then have the resilience to come out of it, right? I think entrepreneurship is really a lot about resilience, about fighting. You know, it takes a long time. These companies take 10 plus years to build, and you're not, you're barely covering your costs, right, along the way, right, for a small chance that you might have an exit. So it's about a lot of persistence, a lot of resilience. That's, how we define and how we find the best entrepreneurs.
We always say insight is 2020. Is there anything that you would have changed, that you would have done differently?
Go first.
I just spoke.
No, I know, but you go. Think about it.
You have to think about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, in my career, certainly hiring really slow, firing fast. I mean, a lot of you know these things. Making sure that the team that you pick, it's a marriage, and you're really, in it to win it, and really take a lot of time, to pick that team. That's the most important thing. The market's going to change. The business model is going to change. The thing that doesn't change is the team, and making sure that's just rock solid. And so I think hindsight for me, 2020, I've definitely had, mixed management teams and mixed co-founders, and the teams that were the companies that did the best obviously had that that lock and that literally the best founder team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I guess I wished I had learned to stop giving a shit a lot earlier than I have, you know? And I think for me, motherhood was very freeing. After you have a child and you go through like the pain, the birth, we had a long story around that, but you realize that you're just really on this earth for a different purpose, and all the other stuff that worrying about being liked and your own insecurities and the way people may treat you or not treat you, and sometimes the kindness that doesn't exist around is like all that stuff that I think can be so painful. It just doesn't matter as much. And so I wish that I had learned that much earlier. I think I spent a lot of my, my teens and my 20s trying to check every box and do everything right, and thought that if I did this and that, I would get there. And what you realize that it's like sometimes it's like just you don't know what's going to happen. Until it actually happens. And I would have, if you asked me a couple years ago, will you be running, a national nonprofit that's taught 40,000 girls, teaching them to code, I would have thought you were crazy. And so you just have to be open to the journey as quickly as possible. And I think part of that is letting go.
Thanks. So we have just a few minutes left, but I want to hear more. How are you changing the world now with Girls Who Code? Tell us, excite us, tell us what's going on about the future, your plan, and then Nihal, maybe with a couple startups that you're very excited about right now.
Yeah. So, the problem I'm trying to solve is to create gender parity in computer science. And so, basically, in the 80s, 37% of computer science majors were women, and today that number is less than 18%. So, if you were to pull up on Google an original picture of Steve Jobs' Macintosh team, there were actually more women on it than any startup team today. The cynical view is that as an industry becomes more powerful, we push women out. So I am basically trying to push women back in. And so my mission is to close the gender gap. We do it in two ways. Well, first of all, I want to give a really quick shout out to AppNexus, because talk about like the power of community. When I had this idea in my head in 2012, I literally just went on GoDaddy and I was like, oh, Girls Who Code's a great name and it's available. I'll buy it.
I went on GoDaddy.
Right. You probably did. You did not. It's not true. But
I looked at the domains under my name still.
My friend Brian was moving into this space, and I thought he might have some few extra conference rooms, so I borrowed one. And so we literally bootstrapped the entire thing. And again, 4 years later, now here we are teaching 40,000 girls. So we basically do two things. We embed classrooms in technology companies. So this year we'll have 78 classrooms across the country in every single company, from AppNexus to Facebook to Square to Pixar to Disney to IBM to Microsoft to Adobe, you name it. They are hosting a Girls Who Code program in the hopes to build the pipeline. I know AppNexus has hired some of our young women who will actually be working on on Brandon's team soon. And then we have Girls Who Code after-school programs in almost all 50 states. We're launching about 1,500 of these programs. And so I have girls literally from homeless shelters who get up every morning in Harlem and walk to Barry Diller's office to learn how to computer program. And she might be sitting right next to a young woman who goes to the best private schools here at Brearley or Dalton or Marymount or one of them. And literally for 7 weeks, both those girls are equally competitive to get a job at AppNexus. So talk about seeing families and girls straight up move into the middle class. And so the big thing that we're trying to shift is culture. So if you think about, people always say to me, what happened in the 80s? Well, in the 1980s, there was Revenge of the Nerds, right? Weird Science. I know there's some old people like me who know what I'm talking about, right? But from the 80s till today, Silicon Alley on HBO, we've had this myth of a programmer, right? A dude in a hoodie, drinking a Red Bull in a basement somewhere, staring at a computer. He hasn't showered, right? And little girls look at them and they say, can't relate. He doesn't look like me. And you cannot be what you cannot see. The only reason why there's parity in law and medicine, in the 70s, 10% of doctors and lawyers were women. The only reason why that number is 50% is because of LA Law, Grey's Anatomy, Ally McBeal, right? Girls constantly looked at these hot, fabulous, smart doctors and lawyers who looked like them. They said, me too. I can do that. The opposite thing is happening in technology. And that means, because I don't care about gender parity for the sake of it, it means so many of our world problems aren't getting solved. It means girls who can find a cure to cancer aren't finding a cure. It means girls who can solve climate change aren't solving it. It means mothers who are, facing obesity, young boys who are, not having dyslexia, their sisters and their daughters are not solving those problems because they don't have access to technology. And so if we just want this world to be a little bit better, we want to make sure that the problems of today and tomorrow are solved. We have to teach girls to code, and we got to do it now.
Again, I hate going after her because it's like, what can I possibly say that's so, how you guys doing? My passion I discovered early with my first startup, even through the bankruptcy, is passion for mobile technology, and so that's what I've been really focused on, in almost 20 years now. And so I think mobile is definitely completely transforming the world, and I think where it's really magical is in getting folks in the developing world that literally leapfrog the desktop and go to mobile. One of our companies is called Inventure, and it's live in parts of Africa and India, where there's a significant part of the population that's unbanked. And so the big thing about those parts of the population is they have no credit, right? Because credit's tied to banking. And so this company is very clever. They devised a way for you to get a credit score by looking at your mobile usage. So how many times are you refilling your SIM card, for example, can actually give you an auxiliary credit score, where then you can literally get loans. And so now this company is generating millions, tens of millions of loans to folks that are unbanked that would never have access to that through mobile technology. So that's where we love to invest, in these kind of disruptive businesses. Another one here in the US, if you have a young baby, it's actually a baby monitor called Owlet, and it's a little sock that you can put on the baby that actually transmits heart rate, blood pressure, and temperature to the parent's phone. So it's really made for SIDS detection. It's already saved actually dozens of babies. They're doing really well. That's called Owlet.
That was almost as exciting as Reshma. Thank you very much. No, good job. Final question. I'm really curious to know how I see the clearly amazing connection between the two of you, how you help each other, how you support each other in terms of moral support, and then how can you encourage people to follow their own passion and to find support wherever they can be, please?
Yeah, I think I always tell people this, I think it's really important to find a partner who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And we've had, I've definitely had some pretty dark moments where I wanted to give up. I didn't think it was going to work out. And I think if I came home tomorrow and said, Nihal, I'm done. I'm not gonna build this. I'm not gonna try for this. I think he'd leave me. And so, he's my biggest champion. After every I think he's probably bought Reshma 2010 through 2040, in hopes one day I
2099.
run again. Right, builds my websites and is like my biggest champion. And I think, especially having a young child, I'm on a plane twice a week sometimes, and so you don't want to leave. You want to feel like you have somebody at home that is at home, and loving, my son as much as I would love them, and when because you don't feel guilty, because you feel guilty all the time when you're a parent. So, yes.
Final word?
For those, so I had the pleasure, Arnaud, thanks for obviously this, and I had the amazing honor of speaking here, I guess 3-4 months ago. And the title of that talk was Sean. Sean is the name of our son, Shaan. And actually, we brought him to the talk and did a little Simba, Lion King raise at the end. And there's a story behind Sean, and it actually connects to both of our lives. We actually went through 3 miscarriages before we had Sean, and each one was, incredibly painful, but we persisted. And I think that's really a symbol of us, of resilience, of persistence. And we say Sean is, 4 souls in one, and he's absolutely incredible, and it was worth it. And we know a lot of folks go through, similar pains, and I guess the advice is just, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep on trying. And Sean was born, about a year ago. The most amazing thing, that has come into our lives. Literally the product of what we preach. And so, yeah, maybe can I drop the mic on that?
Very good. Thank you very much.